Hey everyone, and welcome back. You ready to jump into something kind of different today?
Always up for a challenge. What do you got?
Well, we're going to be looking at the European EV market.
Okay, familiar territory.
But with a twist, we're not just talking about the cars themselves. We're talking about how European giants like Renault and Volkswagen are turning to China for inspiration for their EV strategies.
I see. So it's like looking under the hood to see where the ideas are coming from?
Exactly. It's a bit like, going to a Michelin-starred restaurant.
Fancy.
Yeah, and finding out the head chef actually honed their skills not in some fancy culinary school, but in like a bustling night market in Asia.
Interesting analogy. So we're talking about a shift in the power dynamics of the auto industry.
Exactly, and we've got some fascinating research articles here that really dive deep into this whole thing. Like Renault, for example. They're setting up a whole EV research and development team right in the heart of Shanghai.
Really? I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah. And get this. They're designing a brand new EV, but hold on to your hats. It's not for China. It's meant for Europe.
Whoa, that's a surprise. So they're using Chinese expertise to build a car for European drivers.
That's the gist of it. It's like they're saying, hey, China is rocking the EV scene. Let's learn from the best and bring those skills back to Europe.
That's a pretty bold move, considering Renault hasn't really been a major player in the Chinese market.
True, but they have dipped their toes in the water before. You remember the electric Twingo?
Oh, yeah, right? They partnered with a Chinese company to help develop it.
Exactly. That was all about speeding up development and keeping costs down. But this new project is on a whole other level. It's like they're saying, okay, we've learned the basics. Now we're ready to build a whole new electric speedboat entirely in China, but set sail straight for Europe.
That's a great analogy. And it sounds like Renault is pretty confident in their ability to keep up with the rapid pace of Chinese EV innovation.
Oh, yeah. Their head of industrial strategy even said they could build cars as fast as the most competitive Chinese EV makers.
Wow. Now that's a bold claim. How are they planning to pull that off? Do they have some secret weapon?
Well, I don't know about secret weapons, but they're definitely tapping into China's well-established EV ecosystem. Things like highly efficient supply chains and a workforce that's already specialized in EV production.
So they're leveraging China's strengths to their advantage. It's a smart strategy.
Exactly. And this Shanghai R&D team we talked about, this isn't just some temporary thing.
So it's not just like sending a few engineers over for a quick visit.
Nope. This team reports directly to Renault's headquarters in France, not to Renault China.
Huh. That's interesting. What do you make of that?
Well, to me, it signals that Renault is serious about this. They're not just outsourcing some work. They're building a full-blown EV development system in China. From software to hardware, the whole shebang.
So they're really embedding themselves in the Chinese EV landscape.
Absolutely. It's like they're setting up shop in the heart of Electric Avenue and saying, we're here to stay and we're going to rock this. And you know what? They're not the only ones.
Oh, I'm sure other European automakers are paying attention.
You bet. Other big names like Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz are already cruising down the Chinese EV highway. Some are designing cars specifically for the Chinese market, while others are developing EVs there for global sales.
So there's a lot of different approaches, but they're all recognizing the importance of China in the EV world.
Right. But Renault's strategy stands out to me. They're not trying to muscle into China's already crowded EV market.
Right. They're not going head-to-head with the local players.
Exactly. It's more like they're using China as an EV boot camp, gaining the skills and resources to conquer the European market.
It's like they're saying, hey, China's got the best trainers and the toughest drills. Let's go get ourselves in fighting shape.
Yeah, something like that. And speaking of tough competition, let's shift gears and talk about Volkswagen. They're making some bold moves of their own, doubling down on their presence in China.
Oh, yeah. Volkswagen's been in China for a while now. They've got a huge presence there.
Right. And they're taking it to the next level. They're consolidating all their BEV research and development into one powerhouse called Volkswagen China. China Technology. LTD VCTC for short.
VCTC. Got it. And where's the headquarters for this EV empire?
Anhui Province, a place Volkswagen is envisioning as their Wolfsburg of the East. It's essentially their second global R&D center.
Wow. So they're really making a statement with this move.
Oh yeah, it's like they're building an EV fortress. But what does this mean for their existing R&D teams? Are they all packing their bags and heading to Anhui?
Well, it's a big restructuring for sure. Employees are either being transferred to VCTC in Anhui or moving to other areas within the company. Their Beijing R&D center will still tinker with some hybrid projects.
So there's still some activity in Beijing.
Yeah, but the spotlight is definitely shifting to Anhui. That's where the future of Volkswagen's EV development lies.
So it's like Anhui is the new EV frontier for Volkswagen.
You could say that.
Yeah.
And it's not just research and development either.
Oh, you mean production?
Exactly. All these new models designed at VCTC are going to be manufactured and sold by Volkswagen's 3 joint ventures in China: Volkswagen, Anhui, SAIC, Volkswagen, and FAW Volkswagen.
They're really covering all the bases.
They're going all in on the Chinese EV market. And this move really reminds me of Renault in a way.
Oh, how so?
Well, both companies are drawing on China's EV expertise, but for different playing fields. Renault is using it to power up their position in Europe, while Volkswagen is aiming to dominate the Chinese market itself.
2 different strategies, but both driven by the same force: China's EV prowess.
Exactly. And it'll be fascinating to see how these strategies play out in the long run.
Absolutely. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's take a closer look at the vehicles themselves. When we talk about Volkswagen's future BEVs in China, we're actually talking about 2 distinct platforms, right? MEB and CMP.
You got it. MEB, which stands for Modular Electric Drive Matrix, is their global platform. Their plan is to take these vehicles and tailor them specifically for the Chinese market, making sure they're perfectly suited for Chinese roads and drivers.
So it's like taking a global recipe and adding a local twist.
Precisely. And then there's CMP, which stands for China Main Platform. This one is built from the ground up with the Chinese market in mind.
So CMP is all about catering to the unique tastes and preferences of Chinese drivers.
Exactly. And VCTC will be spearheading the design and development of new vehicles built on this platform.
So they're really putting their Chinese expertise to work.
They are. And here's where things get really interesting for all the tech enthusiasts out there. Both platforms are going to use the CEA electrical and electronic architecture. And guess what? This wasn't just a solo effort by Volkswagen. They teamed up with CARIAD and XPeng, a Chinese EV startup, to make it happen.
Well, a collaboration between a traditional giant like Volkswagen and a nimble startup like XPeng. That's pretty cool.
It is. It shows how the lines are blurring in the automotive world. You've got these established players realizing they need to embrace new technologies and partners to stay ahead of the curve.
And it's a far cry from Volkswagen's old way of doing things. Remember, they used to design and develop BEVs in Germany, and then try to adapt them for China?
Yeah, that approach was like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It just didn't work. With the Chinese NEV market evolving at lightning speed, Volkswagen had to adapt, and VCTC is their secret weapon.
It's like they finally realized they needed to be in the heart of the action, not just watching from the sideline.
Absolutely. They need to be where the innovation is happening, and that's in China.
And speaking of innovation, Volkswagen isn't just focused on design and development. They're also making big strides in production. They're projecting a whopping 40% reduction in production costs for their BEV models.
Now that's impressive. How are they planning to achieve such a significant cost reduction?
A lot of it comes down to Volkswagen Anhui, their joint venture that's all about NEVs. They're leading the charge in production, using their local knowledge and manufacturing muscle to crank out EVs efficiently.
So they're leveraging the efficiency and cost effectiveness of China's EV supply chain.
Exactly. And this cost reduction is a game changer. It gives Volkswagen a huge advantage in the increasingly competitive EV market.
It's a sign of things to come. Other automakers will need to find ways to lower their costs too, or risk being left behind.
Absolutely. And ultimately, it's the drivers who benefit from this competition. Yeah. We'll see better, more affordable, and more technologically advanced EVs hitting the market.
That's the exciting part. The EV revolution is driving innovation like never before. And it's happening on a global scale.
It is. And China is right at the forefront, leading the charge into the future of mobility. But hey, let's not get too carried away just yet.
Right, we've covered a lot of ground already.
We have. So why don't we take a quick break and then come back to wrap up our thoughts on this fascinating topic?
Sounds good to me. I'm looking forward to diving into the bigger picture implications of all this.
Me too. We'll be right back after a short break.
Welcome back. You know, it's really interesting to see how these 2 European giants, Renault and Volkswagen, are approaching the Chinese EV market.
Yeah, it's like they're looking at the same map but choosing different paths to reach their destination.
Exactly. Renault's looking to use China's EV expertise as a stepping stone to boost their position in Europe,
while Volkswagen wants to build their EV empire right there in China.
Yep. 2 very different strategies, but both driven by the same recognition that China is the epicenter of the EV revolution.
And I think that's the biggest takeaway from all of this. China's not just a manufacturing hub anymore. They're leading the way in innovation and technology.
Absolutely. And that's why we're seeing companies like Renault set up these massive R&D centers in China.
Yeah, remember that Shanghai team we talked about? They're not just messing around. They're building a whole EV development ecosystem right there in the heart of Shanghai.
It's like they've created their own EV university.
Haha, yeah, something like that. And they're tapping into China's incredible EV supply chain and their expertise in battery technology.
Which is a huge advantage for Renault,
Yeah.
especially since they haven't really been a big player in the Chinese market before.
Right? They're using China as a launch pad for global domination. It's a bold move.
It is, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out in the long run.
Definitely. Now let's switch gears back to Volkswagen. They're going all in on China, building their Wolfsburg of the East in Anhui province.
They're really making a statement with that move. It's like they're saying, we're here to stay, and we're going to be a major force in the Chinese EV market.
And they're not just bringing their European designs and trying to force them on Chinese drivers.
Right. They're recognizing that the Chinese market is unique.
And that's where their CMP platform comes in, right? Built specifically for China.
Exactly. They're designing cars that cater to the tastes and preferences of Chinese drivers.
And they're not afraid to collaborate with local players either. Remember that CEA electrical and electronic architecture we talked about?
Yeah, that joint project with CARIAD and XPeng, that's a prime example of how the traditional automakers are adapting to the new world of EVs.
They're realizing they need to be more agile, more collaborative, and more open to new technologies and partnerships.
It's like the old rulebook has been thrown out the window.
And that's exciting. It means we're going to see more innovation, more diversity, and more competition in the EV market.
And ultimately, that's good news for drivers. We'll have more choices, better cars, and hopefully lower prices.
Speaking of prices, remember, Volkswagen's plan to slash their BEV production cost by 40%.
Yeah, that's a game changer. It shows just how efficient and cost-effective China's EV supply chain is.
And a lot of the credit goes to Volkswagen Anhui, their NEV-focused joint venture.
Yeah.
They're really leading the charge in production.
Volkswagen's playing it smart. They're not just trying to keep up. They want to be the cost leader in the EV market.
And that's a threat that other automakers can't ignore. It could trigger a price war, which would be great for consumers.
Imagine cheaper EVs, more innovation. It's a win-win.
But let's not forget about the people who build these cars. This shift to China has some people worried about jobs.
Yeah, it's a valid concern. What happens to auto workers in Europe and other countries if production is shifting to China?
It's a complex issue. But here's the thing. The car industry is changing, regardless of where production takes place.
The shift to electric vehicles is creating new jobs in areas like battery technology, software development, and charging infrastructure.
So it's not just about assembling cars anymore. It's about building a whole new ecosystem around electric mobility.
And that requires new skills and new ways of thinking.
Absolutely. It's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. And it's something that governments and educational institutions need to be prepared for.
We need to invest in training and education to make sure people have the skills they need for these new jobs.
It's a team effort. The auto industry is changing, and we all need to adapt and evolve with it.
Couldn't agree more. But hey, enough about the serious stuff for now. Let's talk about something more fun.
Like car designs.
Yeah. After all, we're talking about some of the most iconic car brands in the world. What's going to happen to their signature styles as they embrace Chinese influence?
Right. Will we see a fusion of European elegance and Chinese flair?
It's already happening to some extent. Look at the MG brand, for example. It's owned by SAI, a Chinese company, but their cars are designed in London and have a very European aesthetic.
It's like a cultural mashup on wheels. And as Chinese car companies become more global, I think we'll see even more of this blend of styles.
Definitely. They're not just copying Western designs anymore. They're developing their own unique style, often drawing inspiration from Chinese culture and art.
I love that. Imagine a sleek German sedan with subtle hints of traditional Chinese calligraphy in the interior, or a sporty Italian coupe with a dragon motif on the hood.
Now you're talking. This fusion of design philosophies could lead to some truly stunning and innovative vehicles.
It's an exciting time to be a car enthusiast, that's for sure.
I couldn't agree more. The future of car design is wide open, and China's playing a major role in shaping it.
It's a global game now, and the rules are constantly changing. But one thing's for sure, it's going to be a fascinating ride.
Absolutely. And we'll be here to cover every twist and turn.
So buckle up, everyone, and get ready for the next chapter in the EV revolution. Okay, so we're back and ready to wrap up our look at how European car companies are turning to China for EV know-how.
It's been pretty amazing seeing how Renault and Volkswagen are taking such different approaches.
Yeah, Renault's kind of using China's EV scene to level up their game in Europe, while Volkswagen's going all in on becoming a Chinese EV powerhouse.
And it really makes you think about the bigger picture, doesn't it?
For sure. Like, how is this shift going to change the car industry in the long run?
Yeah, what about jobs and even just how we think about cars in general?
Big questions.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Will China become like the EV superpower, calling the shots for everyone else?
It's definitely possible. I mean, they've got the momentum, the resources, and they're just moving so fast.
But don't count out the other players just yet.
Oh, absolutely. European, American, Japanese car companies, they're not going to give up without a fight.
And that's good news for us drivers, right?
Yeah.
More competition means more innovation, better cars, and hopefully better prices too.
Exactly. And it's not just about the cars themselves either.
Right. The whole EV ecosystem is evolving.
Yeah, with new battery technologies, charging infrastructure, you name it.
So basically, the next time you're checking out a new car, chances are it's going to have a little bit of China in it.
Whether it's the battery, the design, or even just the ideas behind it.
China's influence is going to be everywhere.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a chance to embrace new ideas and new ways of thinking about transportation.
The car industry is changing faster than ever before, and it's exciting to be along for the ride.
Totally. So keep your eyes on China, folks. What's happening over there is a glimpse into the future of transportation.
And who knows, maybe the next big EV breakthrough won't come from Germany or Japan.
Maybe it'll come from a small startup in Shanghai or Shenzhen.
The future belongs to those who are willing to adapt and innovate. That's what we've learned today.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of EVs. And until next time, keep your minds open to the possibilities.